So welcome to video 2 of week 4. For this second video, we'll be talking about planning and how we put everything into focus using context. So to start off, what is context? And Colleen Jones from Cloud defines context as the situation or set of circumstances that surrounds your web content. So in other words, now that we've done our research on our institution, on our users, and on our market, we need to put it all together and create some sort of meaning to all of the analyses that we have. So this is what we're going to do when we start the second phase of our content campaign, which is our planning campaign. So what are the elements specifically of context? And here we're piecing together all the elements of our context that I mentioned before into one contextual bubble. We have our users on the top from our audience analysis. We have our brand on the right from our institutional analysis. We have on the bottom our timing from our market analysis. And then we also have on our left our forums or our channels where all of our content is that we've begun to do our audits on. So they all intersect together in the middle with the result. And that's really what ties everything together here. So this is how we truly begin our planning, by putting all of these analyses into place. And this is how all of the things actually merge together to create one unified context for our project, piecing everything together. And we need to use all of them to create a successful result in the middle. So by looking at all of these and seeing how everything intersects, we actually can judge whether or not we're meeting our result, if there are gaps between our audience and what we want to achieve, how we recognize those, and how we address those by using a content campaign. So let's look at how all of these elements intersect. So in order to create a successful result, we need to create a content campaign that actually influences a couple of things. So with our context, we have what people think, which is their attitudes, and what they do, which is their actions. And then when we add those together, if we do this successfully, we will get a favorable result. If we actually do not put these together, or do one of these things well, which is not change attitudes or not influence people's actions, we're going to get a pretty poor result, or a result that we need to improve upon. So what makes up attitudes and actions? Because like we said, we need to get those right to create a favorable result. So the result comes from these attitudes and actions, and there are factors for changing these attitudes and actions. And here they are. We're going to go through them. So the idea here is that if there's a gap between us and the audience in these areas, we actually need to create a content campaign that addresses that changes people's attitudes and changes people's actions. So the content we create needs to actually close these gaps. So the first factor, if you go down the tree and go to attitude, and you'll see something called likability. And that basically means, do the users like or identify with what you are and what you want to stand for? The second one is trust, and that is, do the users or the audience find you credible and trustworthy, especially regarding what you stand for? The third is something called awareness, which basically means, do users know who you are and what you stand for? And the fourth is motivation, and you'll see that it connects both attitudes and actions. And that is because motivation is, do users want to take the action you want them to take? So that is both action and that is an attitude. And then we have number 5, which is ability. Can the users actually take that action easily? And number 6, which is their trigger, what will actually inspire users to take action now? So if you have a deficit in likability and trust and awareness and motivation, ability, or a trigger, you're not going to have a positive attitude, or the attitude that you'd like in order to accomplish your goal, or the users actually won't take action to create that favorable result. So we'll use these categories throughout the rest of our class, and you'll see that, like I said, if there's a deficit in any of these, so trust, there are ways that you can use a content campaign to create this sense of trust. So if is a deficit of how users find you credible or trustworthy, what kind of pieces of content can you create in a campaign to actually close that gap or increase people's trust? So like I said, if there's a gap there, that's what you want to focus your campaign strategy on. So now what we need to do is actually assess the gaps between the user and the brand.
What's the attraction?
I don't know. Fills gaps, I guess.
What's gaps?
I don't know, gaps. She's got gaps, I got gaps. Together we fill gaps. I don't know.
Gaps. So there's a little Rocky Balboa inspired quote for you. So how do we fill these gaps? We're going to run through a couple things here as an example of how to assess these gaps and knowing where we need to hone in on a content campaign. So gap number one, which would be we need users to, but they, blank, and so a gap is blank. So let's go through a couple examples here. So we need users to be aware of us and to like us. But when we do our analysis, we find that they don't know we exist. So therefore, a gap is awareness. So once again, we want them to be aware of us and like us, but if they don't know we exist, there's an awareness problem. So we need to focus a content campaign on awareness. We need users to trust us, but they're used to a different brand. They trust a different brand. So a gap is trust and likability. So we need users to want to sign up, but they don't see an urgent need for our service. We found that in our analysis. And so therefore a gap is a motivation and a trigger. We need users to be able to sign up, but they have little time and patience. And so a gap is ability, people's actual willingness to take the time to sign up, which is our intended action. So here are those examples of some of these gaps. And what you can do based on your content audit is see what perhaps the campaign was intending to do and what they actually didn't accomplish and what those gaps are. So what you'll want to do is take a look at all of these and identify those gaps. So we've talked about the idea of timing before and whether or not now is a good time for that offering. But this isn't totally something that's make or break. And in fact, when we use an online content campaign, we actually want to close that gap of timing. So just because now might not be the right time, what we need to do is create a content campaign rolled out over time that would allow for the immediate future to be a good time for that offering. So we're closing that gap. So we want to look at how big the gap is between what the users think now and what you want them to think. And the bigger the gap, the more we'll need to raise awareness, to become liked, to earn trust, and to motivate change. And like I said, we do this through a content campaign. And the bigger the gap, the longer campaign will need to be to bring this into alignment. So what are the actual campaign phases to fill these gaps? What are the step-by-step processes that you need to do or accomplish in different steps in order to get to where you need to be? So altogether, there are 3 phases, and like I said, these can be long or they can be short, depending on the extent of these gaps. So in your first phase, you'll want to raise awareness. So just letting people know that you exist in the world. Secondly, you'll need to become liked and trusted. So you couldn't become liked if people didn't know who you were. You can't become trusted if people don't know who you were. So phase 2 directly builds off of phase 1. And then for phase 3, once people know who you are and that you're liked and you're trusted, then what you want to do is motivate, inspire, and help people to take action. So as you can see, these really build off of each other, and you can't get to phase 3 if people don't know who you are. So if the content campaign is all about inspiring people to take action, but people don't know who you are, or number 2, people don't know, they might know of you, but you're not liked and you're not trusted, then people won't do that. So what we do is we roll out each of these three phases, and after you think that you've accomplished the goal of that phase, then you move on to the next one. Now, if people know who you are, but they don't trust you and they're not taking action, then phase 1 could be very short. If people, might like you or trust you a little bit, and you really just need to kind of instill that little bit extra amount of trust to get people to take action, campaign phase 2 might be short. So what you need to do is look at those gaps that we talked about earlier and see where those are, and that will really determine the length of time for each of these 3 phases. So phase 1, raising awareness. People really need to know what you stand for, and so you need web content that shows and tells who you are in a way that attracts and appeals to people. So that is the content you are trying to produce when you are trying to raise awareness. And as we get later on into the second half of this course, what we're going to talk about are all the different tactics that you can do to accomplish that. So right now you should focus on this strategy of creating content that shows and tells who you are in a way that attracts and appeals to people. And once you get that, then what we'll do is align those tactics, the blog posts, the Twitter posts, the Facebook shares, the graphics, the videos that are about this theme, if you have a gap here. So phase 2, after you've completed that, become liked and trusted. And people won't spend time with your content if they don't trust it. People won't make a change unless they trust you. So your content needs to demonstrate your personality, your values, your expertise, and your credibility. So creating all of those things that I mentioned, all of those tactics like blog posts, Facebook shares, that focuses on that theme. So you'll notice it's not just creating things on Facebook. It is creating things on Facebook that addresses the gap in each of these areas. So the strategy isn't just to be on Facebook. The strategy is each of these different phases that you create content about. And then finally, for phase 3, it's to motivate, inspire, and help people to take action. People won't take action unless they want to, and they can do so easily. So to get that, they need to know who you are and to trust you. And so your content needs to explain how the action will meet people's needs best, offer them benefits, and you need to prove that it's easy to do. At the right time, your content must call people to take action, and you want to guide people through that action. So those are the distinct 3 phases of a campaign, a content strategy campaign that addresses the needs and fills that gap between where people are and where people need to be in order for you to meet your goal. So that is context, and next up is video 3, where we're really going to talk about taking that context and from that creating goals, strategies, and tactics that will really allow you to fill those gaps that we've identified.